Hello, everyone, and welcome to #Remember. I'm your host, John Nelson. Today, for this segment, we have the CEO of the Texas Task Force for LODDs, Wendy Norris. Currently serving as chaplain and first responder for the Forest Bend Fire Department in Webster, Texas, Wendy Norris wears many hats in the world of firefighting well-being and line-of-duty death support. Wendy's a master's certified chaplain and an instructor for the Federation of Fire Chaplains. She's worked on response teams for 9/11, Hurricane Katrina, Ike, Harvey, and the Santa Fe ISD shooting, and the El Paso Walmart shooting. She also led the LODD Task Force response during the West explosion. More recently, Wendy's work has delved into post-vention support, mental health programs, and the COVID-19 crisis. Wendy is the presiding officer of the Governor's Advisory Panel for the Star of Texas Awards, honoring injured and fallen first responders. Additionally, she serves on the Texas Department of Health First Responders Mental Health Working Group and coordinates the Phoenix Project for the Injured First Responders Working Group. Wendy, you're a busy woman. Welcome to #Remember.
Thank you so much for having me. I know you were reading through that and I was like, oh my goodness.
Well, you do a lot for first responders, fallen heroes, people going through a lot. We really appreciate having you on today, and we want to give you the opportunity to talk about those things and let people know what resources you can bring to the table.
Thank you, John. I'm so honored to be a part of this program. I know you're doing some really amazing work across the country and with the foundation, National Fallen Firefighters Foundation. So it's truly an honor to be able to come on to your podcast and be able to talk a little bit about what we're actually doing here in the state of Texas.
Well, thank you for coming. Wendy, let's get into it. You yourself said that you faced a career-ending injury and then saw the need to fill the gaps of the fire service when it came to caring and supporting for first responders that were catastrophically injured in the line of duty. Soon after that, your work quickly transitioned into serving the agencies and families of fallen firefighters and first responders. Talk to us about the history of the Texas LODD Task Force and how it's grown to fill those gaps that you saw in supporting first responders and everyone affected by near misses and line of duty deaths and other things like mental health and COVID and that
all the
that
things.
realm of things. Yeah, so much
Yes,
stuff.
I know. Sure. So I had wanted to be a firefighter since I was itty bitty, around 5, actually. And so I was very blessed to have the opportunity to be in the fire service as a fire explorer when I was in high school, and worked for the local fire department through a program in the high school where the city allowed high schoolers, 10th grade and older, to hold a position within the city government. And so I was afforded the opportunity to work for that little local fire department out in California, as a matter of fact. And their claim to fame was that they were the first fire department on the West Coast. So we'll claim it. Then I ended
What
up
fire
moving
department was that again?
Benicia Fire Department.
Benicia.
Yeah.
Cool. Sounds like an awesome program.
Yeah, it really was. And I'm glad that I had that opportunity. Not very many kiddos who have dreams like that get that opportunity. So it really sealed it in me and in my DNA to be a firefighter and follow through with that. And I was blessed to go through school and get my fire certification, paramedic certification, all the things that go along with that position. And then I specialized in industrial firefighting, which is something that a lot of female firefighters don't even go into. Not a lot of firefighters go into that, really, generally speaking, but that was a huge industry out in California, and it is down here where I currently reside in the Houston area. And so when I moved to Texas, I pursued that and then also joined a local volunteer fire department because I did want to keep up my municipal certifications and trainings and responses and things like that. And so in 1997, there was a large apartment fire that I responded to and ended up having a pretty catastrophic injury when the roof collapsed, the ceiling collapsed on that. There's a whole long story that we don't really have time to get into on this particular episode, but maybe one day I can come back and share that. So anyways, the injury ended up causing a skull fracture and a brain bleed. So I had a traumatic brain injury. Wow. On top of it knocked my face mask off, and I inhaled superheated gases and smoke and steam and all the things. And so I had burns to my lungs as well. So the brain injury piece, I probably could get around that as far as being able to go back into the line of fire, so to speak. Although I like to blame everything on the brain injury nowadays. So if I forget something, I go, it's just the brain injury. Most people know that, and they don't let me get away with that. But the lung piece, though, is important because I lost a good capacity or piece of the left part of my lung. And so being able to go into those situations, into like burning buildings, I could no longer do. And it was devastating when the doctor came in and told me that I would no longer be able to be a firefighter since I had that dream since I was little. And so I was so young. I was like a brand new rookie firefighter. And so I had this whole career planned for the rest of my life. So it was a 2-year journey because of the type of injuries that I had in the recovery process. And there was a lot of political dynamic that kind of went around the injury and what happened with that. And so I really wanted to be able to keep my foot in the door and be able to stay within the fire service, knowing that I couldn't. There wasn't very many opportunities or options for me to do that. And because of that experience, I really became pretty depressed. I really thought a lot about suicide, really, because I thought my life was over. I was like 21, maybe. And so my sister came to me and she said, I feel like you need some help. I was like, you're probably right. And so the recovery piece, part of that too, was mentally as well, and trying to kind of get that mindset back on the recovery piece, and then what can I do with the story? And that's where the idea came as far as the organization itself. And back in the dial-up age of AOL in 1999, how things have changed. My goal for the organization was to be able to connect firefighters to other firefighters in resources that had complicated injuries. And there were quite a few that I had found on the AOL forums and things like that. But back then, there wasn't a lot of resources online like we have nowadays. And the connections were a lot harder because we didn't have Facebook or Instagram or a lot of the communication programs that we have now. So that was the original intent for the program. And then within a year, I was invited to go and respond and help out on a line of duty death. And I'll be honest with you, I was kicking and screaming into that because for a long time when I was dealing with the injuries, I why'd. I did a lot of why. Why didn't I die? Because if I had, I would have been honored. I think that you will find with many injured that if you didn't, when you die in the line of duty, you're thought of as a hero. You're given a hero's funeral. There's a lot that goes with that. But when you're injured, you screwed up somewhere, like you didn't do something right. And that was the feeling that I had. And so I kept thinking if I had died, my husband would have gotten the benefits. I would have gotten a funeral. I would have been honored instead of kind of going through all the things that I had gone through. And so I went kicking and screaming into that response. But when I got there and realized there's a lot of pain and a lot of turmoil and a lot of politics and a lot of difficulty that go with line of duty deaths as well, it kind of readjusted my attitude and my mindset on that. And then from there, we started getting requests to come and assist one right after another. And then in 2001, it was mandated here in the state of Texas that the state fire marshal's office would then investigate any line of duty death with first responders and firefighters. And so we became connected with that. So primarily what we do now is take care of line of duty deaths and those families and those agencies that need that assistance. And then our services that we provide have just really blossomed over the years just with needs that have come up. And so with the program that we put together with what we like to say is A to Z services. And so with our team of all volunteers, we're an all volunteer organization. Nobody gets paid. We do everything from if we have volunteers that are close enough, be able to do death notifications. And then we go into the funeral planning, crisis management, social services, benefits, all those things that occur in that first an at-need response where we send our honor guard and our team in to help. And then once we transition past the funeral itself, we go into the long-term care where it is filing for those benefits and getting the families and agencies connected to resources, things like that. So it's a lot that's there, and it develops every year. COVID has been one of those years for sure.
Yeah, it sounds like you guys are serving Texas first responders and coordinating quite a bit of support for them in all the things you do. Now, is that only related to line of duty deaths, what you guys are doing, or are you also still helping people with near misses? I know a lot of people, not a lot, but a few in my fire department, I myself have been through some injuries. Workers' compensation insurance is a nightmare. Do you guys work in those capacities at all with those near misses and people that are injured on the job?
We do to a certain extent, and I'll be honest with you, it's the one area that when I started this organization was my passion was for the injured. And unfortunately, we haven't been able to come full circle with that as far as being able to provide all of those services for the injured. And, I had to be okay with that. Um, but we've tried over and over again. And it's such a complicating piece with exactly what you were saying with the workers' compensation part of things. If you're a paid firefighter, or for us, we take care of all first responders. So we do fire, EMS, and police. But if you're a paid firefighter, it's very different than if you're a volunteer firefighter with a volunteer fire department, because the benefits look very different for the injured. There may be a department that doesn't have as much as far as insurance and being able to provide that kind of care. And then, like you said, workers' comp is very difficult. So we've been trying to take a valiant effort at putting services together, and we've joined forces with the Fire Chiefs Association, with TSAF, the State Fire Marshals Association, Firemen's and Fire Marshals, and it seems like there's one block after another after another. So we're still working on it. It's not to my satisfaction. We've done LODD so well, and I want to be able to do the same for the injured. We just haven't been able to find the magic key yet.
It's kind of two different animals too,
Yeah,
I
it
mean,
is.
related, but um, personally speaking, one of the best things that ever happened to me was getting in touch with, I think it was the Texas Department of Insurance, but they have a first responders division that
Yes.
you can actually, and you can get appointed a particular person. They have a title, I don't know what it's called, but it's not an ombudsman, but it's someone who literally is like an expert in firefighters and first responders getting injured on the
Right.
job and what you should do. There is so much stuff we don't know. And
Right.
just it's a whole other thing I don't want to get into, but man, if you guys could provide that resource as well, I know a lot of guys need that,
Yeah,
especially first time you're ever injured, you're just kind of blindsided, you're hurt. It's a lot to take in. It's a
it
lot,
is.
but you guys are doing some amazing stuff. Like I told you before, my people that I work with speak very highly of you, people in our honor guard. So, you're doing some really great things on the LODD side as well. And it's a lot to take on. And Wendy, correct me if I'm wrong, you guys are a 100% volunteer organization. Is that correct?
Yes, so we are set up as a 501c3 nonprofit, and we live off of the donations of very generous individuals and companies and all of our volunteers. And we've got probably about 50 of them throughout the state of Texas are all volunteer. And most of them are first responders or families of first responders. So, yes.
Nice. And I want to touch back on one of the topics you mentioned earlier. You
Sure.
mentioned your own struggles with suicidal thoughts. Um, I can only imagine the injuries you were going through and where your
Yeah.
mind was there. Um, but it's good that you've had that experience because, as you've said, your work has recently expanded into the post-vention realm and support groups, services and agencies for the families that have experienced loss of first responders due to suicide. So, um, you've also dealt with mass shootings like the one in Santa Fe in 2018. You acted as a public information officer, offering support to families impacted by homicide. You're also working as a communication specialist for the Gulf Coast Center's COVID-19 crisis counseling program.
Right.
a global health issue we're still dealing with as this episode airs. How has the Texas LODD Task Force and and the first responder industry as a whole expanded to support all those who are affected by mental health and these recent viruses, the recent virus of COVID-19, which has negatively impacted all these people with these unfortunate events, catastrophes, physical health concerns? How have you guys and the industry as a whole helped people that are dealing with these kind of extraneous issues that aren't just getting hurt or killed on the job?
Yeah, there's a lot that's there, and I
Yeah,
think that
a
I
lot to
think
unpack.
I know, and I think for 2020, it really has given the public some very, very close insight into what frontline workers really go through. And just having their own issues in dealing with COVID or dealing with the disasters. I mean, what a year we have had with natural disasters, all of the hurricanes that have come up through the Gulf of Mexico. I think that like we went past the Greek alphabet. And I think Louisiana got hit 4 or 5 times. And that was
Yeah,
right on the edge of where we live. And so there was so many disasters, the fires out in California. It's just been a tremendous year for the public to be able to see what our first responders go through. And that's even on top of the racial tensions that have come up where the law enforcement piece has really been put underneath the microscope, which in turns put the first responders on under that same microscope. So I know when I go and respond on these emergencies with my fire department, we're being filmed constantly, like CPRs or even just basic EMS calls or fires. I mean, fires, yes, they're exciting. You want to put those on Instagram if you're the public, but these very benign type of incidents were being filmed. And first responders, like the firefighters and EMS, are also getting shot at. Like here in Houston, we had a very tragic incident with an arson investigator who was shot and died. And so we're seeing these things that are occurring within the fire service and EMS that we aren't really used to, you know.
yeah,
Things are changing dynamically for us when we talk about culturally. You know, I know you and I have had discussions about like firefighter fatalities just from the job of fighting fire or in apparatus accidents. But we're really seeing that increase of harm caused to us by another individual. And so there's this increased amount of stress that happens with our first responders that we've never really had to deal with, except maybe in the last 5 years where we've really seen that kind of shift take place. And so you come into the year like 2020 already kind of stressed out from what we do on the job, the public scrutinizing every step that we take, and then the politics that occur within an agency itself or within a city or community. It just puts us into this overload, overwhelm, sometimes hopeless feeling of what is going on with our lives, you know. And
yeah,
so that's an important piece with trying to keep a firefighter healthy. It's holistic. It's a complete wellness package. And the foundation, the National Fallen Firefighters Foundation, many years ago, with their 16 initiatives and their Everyone Goes Home program, really kind of was the cutting edge of looking at holistically the approach with firefighters and keeping them alive. And Initiative 13 is their behavioral health piece. And that was the first one to actually be taken out and explored, which I sat on that panel for. Because when you
nice.
have a firefighter that they're healthy emotionally, psychologically, mentally, you're going to have a firefighter that has resilience when it comes to exposure to trauma. And so for our organization, seeing that and being a part of that, and then watching the trends of more and more first responders struggling with not only post traumatic stress, but grief issues, which we don't talk a lot about. And everybody's got grief issues, especially this year. And if you don't address those, can cause catastrophic things to occur within a family. But also just like financial issues, substance abuse issues, all of those things And so for us, seeing that increase and then also seeing suicides rise here just in the state of Texas really has caused us to say, what can we do to prevent our firefighter fatalities and our first responder fatalities for suicide or mental health overdose, things like that? So that's an important piece for us. And just watching these families that have gone through a loss by suicide or overdose and just the stigma that's attached to that really gives us pause too, because a lot of times those families are ostracized. So.
Wendy, you've mentioned quite a few programs that you guys are involved in, that you do. Where can someone access this information? And if you've got information beyond the state of Texas, because this will be globally broadcast on the internet, how do people reach you personally, your organization, and then beyond if they're in other states with similar agencies such as the one you have?
Sure. So you can reach us here in the state of Texas, or we have people from around the country that contact us as well. We're all pretty connected with each other, thankfully. So you can reach me on our website at www.TXLODDtaskforce.com. And then you can find us on all the social media platforms underneath of the same Texas LODD Task Force. Except for Instagram, you have to add the Texas LODD Task Force. So you can reach us through there. Myself and several of our other volunteers monitor that all the time, so feel free to call. And then if you do experience an emergency or a line of duty death, or you're struggling with something, we have a hotline that is on the front page of our website that you can call us and it will be answered 24 hours a day. Throughout the state, or throughout the country, excuse me, the National Fallen Firefighters Foundation has a program called LAST. And that is basically the teams that have been formed around the country that do similar programs to what we do. Each state is very different depending on funding sources and things like that. So if you go on firehero.org, which is the foundation's website, underneath of the fire service tab, you can find the resources that are specific to the state in which you live. And the great piece too about their website also, and you can find it on ours as well, is there is a benefits section where you can see what benefits are available within each state too, which is very important in understanding how those work too. There's a lot of red tape and hoops to jump through.
Definitely. But it sounds like there's two really good one-stop shops, your website and then the National Fallen Firefighters Foundation website. So that's very helpful. Wendy, we know you're a busy woman. We just want to thank you so much for joining us on #Remember. Your efforts are inspiring, your tireless efforts, I should say. It's been an honor and a pleasure to talk with you today. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor, and hopefully we can get the word across about what's going on in this country with our firefighters and the work that you're doing.
Definitely. Thank you.
Thank you.
The great Wendy Norris, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for joining us on #Remember. If you like what you hear, make sure you #Remember on all the social medias, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. This and all of the After the Fire podcast episodes can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and YouTube. Please subscribe and tell a friend or two. Also, remember to check out all the bonus material that we have on afterthefirepodcast.com. Again, that's afterthefirepodcast.com. Join us next time when our guest will be the incomparable Chief Billy Goldfeder. Take care of yourself, take care of each other, and we'll see you after the fire.